It's hard to believe that a comedy show could cause such a stir that it ended up being shut down by a major television network. But that's exactly what happened with the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour. What started as a light-hearted variety show quickly turned into one of the most controversial and talked-about programs in American television history. It challenged the status quo, pushed back against censorship, and gave a voice to people and ideas that were often ignored on mainstream TV. And all of it was led by two brothers who just wanted to mix music and comedy. Tom and Dick Smothers. Growing up wasn't easy for them. Their father, Major Thomas Smothers Jr., served in World War II and suffered through the Bataan Death March. He didn't make it back home. That left their mother to raise them alone in California. It's not hard to imagine how those early struggles shaped the way they saw the world, and how they eventually chose to express themselves through their performances. From the very beginning, their act was about more than just laughs. It had heart, honesty, and a spark of rebellion that only grew stronger over time. Their career took off at a small nightclub in San Francisco called the Purple Onion. What was supposed to be a 2-week gig turned into a 36-week sensation. Their act wasn't flashy or full of big stunts. It was simple and smart. Folk songs mixed with funny banter and real-life sibling teasing. Tom played the silly, clueless brother. Dick was the serious one, always trying to keep things on track. That back-and-forth chemistry felt genuine because it was. Audiences loved them not just for their jokes, but because they seemed real. Like people you actually knew. By the mid-1960s, their growing popularity caught the attention of CBS. The network was struggling to get young viewers, especially up against the ratings giant Bonanza on NBC. They took a chance on Tom and Dick, hoping the brothers could bring in a younger, more socially aware crowd. That bet paid off in a big way. The Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour premiered in 1967, and it wasn't like anything else on TV. It had music, comedy and celebrity guests, but it also had something much more rare. Honesty about what was happening in the world. Tom Smothers made sure of that. When they signed their contract, he insisted on having full creative control. That was almost unheard of at the time. Most networks wanted strict oversight, but CBS gave the brothers room to experiment. And they did. They invited guests who weren't welcome anywhere else. Pete Seeger, for example, had been blacklisted for years, but the Smothers Brothers brought him on anyway. Protest music, anti-war messages, and commentary on civil rights started showing up regularly on their show. It wasn't just entertainment. It was a reflection of the chaos, passion, and activism of the 1960s. Of course, not everyone was thrilled about this new direction. CBS quickly realized they had a show that was pushing boundaries. Maybe too far for their comfort. They started watching everything closely. Every script, every joke, every song had to be reviewed. Edits were demanded. Segments were cut. But Tom and Dick didn't back down. In fact, they got even more creative. They turned the censorship itself into part of the comedy. They made fun of the system that was trying to silence them. It was bold, and it worked, until it didn't. The writers behind the scenes were just as important as the performers. Names like Steve Martin, Rob Reiner, and Mason Williams might be more familiar today. But back then, they were part of a young, energetic team that wanted to shake things up. They weren't just writing jokes. They were writing statements. Clever, pointed ones that often slipped past the censors, only to land with full impact on the viewers at home. The show constantly danced on the edge of what was acceptable, which only made it more exciting to watch. One moment that's still talked about today happened on September 17, 1967. The Who performed on the show, and during the final moments of their song, drummer Keith Moon blew up his drum kit, literally. The explosion was bigger than expected and even injured guitarist Pete Townshend's ear. The chaos, the shock, the raw energy. It was unforgettable. It perfectly captured what made the show stand out. It wasn't safe or polished. It was wild and real. Another way the show made waves was by introducing American audiences to something they hadn't really seen before. Music videos. The Smothers Brothers aired promotional films from the Beatles, including Hey Jude and Revolution. These weren't just performances, they were visual statements. And for many viewers, it was their first time seeing music presented that way. It changed how people thought about both music and television. But the music was just one part of the show's message. Artists like Jefferson Airplane, Joan Baez, and Buffalo Springfield came on the show and didn't just perform, they spoke out. They used their time on screen to highlight serious issues like nuclear war, racism, and the draft. Joan Baez, for example, tried to dedicate a song to her husband, who had been jailed for resisting the draft. CBS censored the message. It was a small moment, but it revealed a bigger issue: how far the network was willing to go to avoid political heat. The show wasn't just pushing against TV norms. It was facing real pressure from powerful places. Both President Lyndon B. Johnson and President Richard Nixon tried to limit the show's reach. They saw it as a threat, something that could influence public opinion in ways they couldn't control. And they weren't entirely wrong. The Smothers Brothers had become more than entertainers. They were part of the national conversation, and that made them dangerous to the establishment. As more and more attention focused on the show, CBS started cracking down. Sponsors got nervous. Big companies like Ford and Procter & Gamble pulled their ads. CBS made stricter rules. Scripts had to be submitted weeks in advance. Performances had to be pre-approved. The freedom that had once made the show so powerful was slowly being taken away. But Tom and Dick didn't give in. They fought back the only way they knew how: through comedy. They even created sketches where characters would be censored in real time, cut off mid-sentence or muted as a joke. It was smart. It was funny. And it made a point. Eventually, though, CBS had enough. In 1969, the network canceled the show. Officially, they blamed missed deadlines and contract issues. But everyone knew the truth. The network didn't want to deal with the controversy anymore. The Smothers Brothers were saying things too many people in power didn't want said. And so the show was taken off the air. But that wasn't the end of the story. Not even close. The cancellation caused a public outcry. People wrote letters. Newspapers published editorials. Other performers and writers came forward to support the brothers. It wasn't just about one TV show anymore. It was about free speech, about artistic expression, and about standing up to censorship. The Smothers Brothers became symbols of resistance, not through protest marches or speeches, but through comedy and music. Even after the show ended, its impact continued. It opened the door for future shows to talk about real issues. Programs like Saturday Night Live, All in the Family, and The Daily Show owe a lot to what the Smothers Brothers did first. They showed that you could mix comedy with commentary, and that audiences were ready for it. The show also helped launch the careers of musicians who would go on to define a generation. It brought countercultural voices into millions of homes. It made protest songs feel personal. And it showed that television didn't have to be afraid of politics. It could be a platform for truth. Looking back, the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour feels like more than just a TV show. It was a mirror of its time. Funny, messy, emotional, and brave. It didn't play it safe, and that's exactly why people still remember it. It spoke up when it mattered. It challenged the rules and paid the price. But in doing so, it helped change what was possible on television. And maybe the most inspiring part of all is that Tom and Dick Smothers never set out to be revolutionaries. They were just brothers who liked making each other laugh. They turned that bond into something powerful. A voice that still echoes today. If you enjoyed learning about the story behind one of television's most daring shows, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe for more surprising stories from pop culture history, and leave a comment letting us know what topic you want us to talk about next. Your support means everything, and we can't wait to bring you more stories that change the way we see the world.